Hi everyone, this is Joseph again with another video. And today I'm going to talk about jazz. The jazz community lost two people last week, Creed Taylor, and he was in his 90s, he lived a long life. And tragically also Joey DeFrancesco, the great jazz organist, who was rather young, he was only 51, he died rather unexpectedly. But I'm going to talk about these amazing jazz figures. And first of all, I'm going to talk about Creed Taylor. What's interesting about Creed Taylor is he was not a musician. He was a record producer. In fact, I'm not sure that he even had any musical background or musical knowledge, because most record producers do have some background in music. So I'm not really quite sure about Creed Taylor. He got his career started at Bethlehem Records. He produced some records by Chris Connors, the great jazz vocalist, among others. Eventually he moved to ABC Records. He eventually went to Impulse. He signed John Coltrane, but he wasn't at Impulse very long. I believe he produced some of the early John Coltrane albums before Coltrane really went out into the avant-garde. But Creed Taylor eventually moved to Verve Records. And one of the one albums that most people are most familiar with, probably produced by Creed Taylor, is Gets in Gilberto. Of course, the classic Bossa Nova album, the album that brought the Bossa Nova sound to the United States with, of course, Stan Getz on tenor, Joe Gilberto on guitar and vocals, and Antonio Carlos Jobim on piano. And they brought in Astrud Gilberto, who was Joe's wife at the time. She had never sung professionally at that time, and it's kind of on the spur of the moment. They wanted a vocalist, the story goes, and so they had Astrud sing it, and she does such a remarkable job. It's just cool and breezy, and really one of the iconic performances in Bossa Nova, and still maybe never matched. Later on, The Girl from Ipanema would probably be played to death in so many other artists and in movies and maybe commercials, but really this version is the version. And like I say, Creed Taylor was a part of it. He helped produce it and bring the Bossa Nova sound to the United States. One of my all-time favorite artists is, of course, Bill Evans, the great jazz pianist Bill Evans. I liked all the eras of Bill Evans, of course, the classic Riverside, the Vanguard shows, and of course the ones with Scott LaFaro on bass. But Bill had an outstanding run at Verve Records, and I believe almost all of them were produced by Creed Taylor, including this one, Trio 65. This one, on the trio, he has Chuck Israels on bass and Larry Bunker on drums. Outstanding album. Here he does Israel for one of the first times, and a great version of Elsa. There's another song that he's done throughout the years. A really beautiful song, Around Midnight. And he has an album, Trio 64 and 65. Both of them are outstanding. This one is a OG that I actually picked up a couple years ago. It's a mono, and you can still get some of the Bill Evans albums on Verve at a fair price if you keep your eyes open, so you never know, because the Riversides, of course, go for a lot more money. But Bill, as I said earlier, had an outstanding run on Verve, and I enjoy all of Bill's albums on Verve. They were all produced by Creed Taylor. After his run at Verve, and I'm not sure, I think he produced a couple albums with A&M for a while before he started his own company, which was CTI Records. And for many people, their favorite album on CTI, mine included, is Red Clay by Freddie Hubbard. This is just a blazing album. You can almost tell that it's hot just by looking at the album cover. And then you can see Freddie on the back. He almost like he's going to be blowing smoke there with the way he's holding the trunk. Yeah, in fact, there is smoke coming out of the picture, because Freddie was just smoking at this time. And Red Clay is such a funk jazz tune with great performances by Freddie, Herbie Hancock on piano, Ron Carter on bass, really laying it down on bass, and Joe Henderson on tenor, and some great drumming by a very young Lenny White. One thing I'd say about this too is I was able to hear Freddie about the time of this recording. My dad used to take my mom and me to jazz clubs throughout Southern California, and I heard Freddie at Howard Rumsey's Concerts by the Sea, which was a jazz club in Redondo Beach. For some reason, this particular night, we ran into a problem. I don't know what the problem was, because the venue did allow minors, but for some reason this particular evening, I don't know if the kitchen was closed or they were not making food that day, but for some reason they were not allowing me to go in. And my dad pleaded the case. I'm pretty sure he told Howard Rumsey himself that, hey, my kid really is a big fan of Freddie's. You got to let him in. And so Howard Rumsey eventually let me in, and my mom and dad, and we heard Freddie with an amazing performance. I can remember the group somewhat. That he had a Junior Cook on tenor and George Cables on piano, and I don't remember the bass and drums. But all I can tell is that Freddie was on fire in that era of the 70s. And I went on to hear Freddie a couple more times through the years. But I'll always remember that first time when he was in that red clay groove. Another outstanding album on CTI is Jim Hall's Concerto, with another one of my favorite trumpet players is Chet Baker's on this album. Him and Jim Hall complement each other with that kind of sparse sound they get, and also Roland Hanna's on piano. Ron Carter was a mainstay at CTI. He really was on bass on a lot of the albums. Steve Gadd also is on a lot of the albums. He's of course playing drums. Paul Desmond is here. Paul Desmond made a couple albums on CTI. All of them are beautiful albums. But here, there's a great version of "You'd Be So Nice to Come Home To," and one on side 2 is all a Concerto de Arrangeois, I guess you say it. But that's a song, one of the songs off Sketches of Spain. Here, the group does it in almost like they get into a funk groove, a mellow funk groove, with all of them soloing in an outstanding way. And I can't recommend this one. This is a reissue. The original album is blue, and it's a gatefold. That's one thing that made CTI Records really stand out, is the album covers were very iconic, and sometimes they had nothing to do with anything, but they were always great pictures. Next up, from jazz, it goes to like Brazilian funk jazz with Eretto. This was one of his early albums called Fingers. Once again, a crazy cover with a red hand with a fly on it. Don't know what that's all about, but it's got Eretto in the back and a gatefold where he's backed up by a group called Opa. I believe they were from South America. But it's a beautiful album, really funky stuff. And an outstanding cut on here is San Francisco River, where his wife, Flora Purim, just sings a surreal vocal, especially as they're going out. Really check it out. If you've never heard San Francisco River by Eretto, stream it today, because it's got really a sublime performance by Flora Purim, who is one of my favorite vocalists too. You can hear almost a hint of through all the Brazilian female singers, they all have that light, breezy sound like Astrid Gilberto, and it's a beautiful sound. Finally, this is one of my recent finds that I found in my digs through the crate digging, and this is Johnny Hammond. This is on Kadu Records, which was a subsidiary of CTI, and this was for more funk-orientated jazz, and Johnny Hammond had some great funky albums. With here, he has Ron Carter again on bass, Jack DeJohnette, Steve Gadd, and Joe Henderson on tenor once again. But here Joe is really playing some of the funkiest jazz tenor for Henderson that I've ever heard. And it's a great album. He does a wonderful version of Summertime and The Ghetto, the Donny Hathaway song, and also The Higher Ground, of course, that's the title, the Stevie Wonder song. So all the Kadu albums are excellent. There's Johnny Hammond, Grover Washington Jr. recorded there, Esther Phillips, Hank Crawford, Idris Muhammad. Some great albums on Kadu Records. The other artist I would like to talk about is Joey DeFrancesco. Joey died last week also. He was young. I believe he was only 51. He started off as a child prodigy. I believe he was only 16 when he joined Miles' band. And he had a career through all these years, just playing some really outstanding organ. He was also multi-instruments. He could play pretty good trumpet, and in the last couple of years he was playing some tenor sax and also a vocalist. So he was really an outstanding talent. I don't have any albums of his, but I stream him often. And one of the last albums I remember streaming by him was the creator of has a master plan, where he actually plays with Pharoah Sanders or Saunders, Pharoah Saunders, and also he has an album with Van Morrison. Both of those are outstanding albums. And a personal story I'd like to share about Joey. I didn't know him, but I have a friend, Ramon Banda from Southern California. He was a drummer, a timbal player, which is rather extraordinary because he was both. He could play both timbales. For many years he played with Poncho Sanchez on timbales, but he was also an outstanding drummer, playing jazz drums. And when Joey would come to town to Southern California, he would hire Ramon, but Ramon tragically died from some lingering illnesses about 2 years ago. And just want to say that Joey was just so gracious to Ramon's family. He was just you could really see he was feeling the condolence, trying to console the family. And in fact, afterwards, there was a get-together after Ramon's funeral, and a lot of the local guys got together to have some jam session, and they had an organ there for Joey to play, and Joey came, and he was jamming with all the local guys, and they had a great time remembering my friend Ramon. So we won't forget Joey DeFrancesco either, because he was just a remarkable talent, and his music will live on as the music of Creed Taylor too. So that's all for now. Like, subscribe. Hope you enjoy the videos. Bye.